Colossians chapter 1. And as you're turning there, let me see the top performers there. Looks like Mom's ahead. Unless somebody wants to give me their points and we can know. Yeah, there ain't really a whole lot to say about that. It looks like we're going to win. I will say, are y'all the blue team? We're the blue team. We're the red team. The blue team, you can still win. Like, don't give up. It is possible that nobody on the red team shows up the next 2 weeks. And I started, since we're doing teams, I started to make a trade. I started to trade and put Mom on y'all's team because that would put us dead even. And I learned how to do that. But I thought, no, we're not going to do it because I'm on that team, to be honest with you. So, the book of Colossians. The book was written by the Apostle Paul while he was in prison in Rome. Just a few things about it. He writes this book around 64 A.D. He also writes the book of Ephesians, Philippians, and Philemon while he is in prison there in Rome. Now, Paul wasn't the pastor of this church in Colossus. He didn't start the church there. There's no record that Paul actually goes to the city of Colossus. But we do know he had a ministry, and he went to the nearby city of Ephesus and would no doubt have an impact on this neighboring city of Colossus. Now, looking at Colossians 4, a man by the name of Epaphras, it is said, could have possibly been the pastor of this church in Colossus. And you know, a lot of times Paul writes to these churches. He writes to the church in Rome. He writes to the church in Corinth. He writes to the church in Ephesus, Galatia, Colossus, Thessalonica. He writes to churches. So, you know, a lot of times people want to argue, well, the church ain't a building, it's the people. And they're halfway right. The church is people, the body of Christ, the universal church. But if the local church, the building, where believers went together, if it wasn't important, why did Paul write a third of his letters to the church? And then another 3 more to 2 letters to Timothy, to Titus, to pastors of churches. So Paul, in Ephesians 4, we see this who could have been the pastor here. Ephesians 4 verse 12, he says, Epaphras, who is one of you, a servant of Christ, saluteth you, always laboring fervently for you in prayers, that ye may stand perfect and complete in all the will of God. For I bear him record that he hath great zeal for you, and them that are in Laodicea, and then in Hierapolis. So, you know, this does tell you some things that a pastor ought to be. Obviously ought to be a servant of Christ. He ought to pray for his people. He ought to have a zeal for his people. So it is said that this guy Epaphras could have been the pastor of this local body of believers. So throughout Paul's ministry and in Colossians, he refutes some heresies of different groups of people that were back in that day. And we're just going to go over a few of these groups. One were the Ebionites, Ebionites. They followed the teachings of Christ, but they denied his deity. They thought he was just a good man. They thought he was just a good, maybe even a prophet. but he was not the Son of God. They thought, well, he had some good teachings and things like that. He had some good sayings. So they followed his teachings, but they denied him being the Son of God. And can I just say, you can't get saved that way. You can't get saved just by following the teachings of Jesus Christ. We have to believe the gospel, and part of the gospel is that he was the Son of God who came to this world. You also had another group. It's the Essenes, Essenes. They denied, their main teaching was they denied the flesh to the point that they trusted their works for salvation. So even though Paul teaches us to deny the flesh, we should deny the flesh. We should go out of our way every once in a while just to tell the flesh no. These people took it to the extreme, to the point that they denied the flesh so much that they began to rely on their works, their life, their living, their way of living for their salvation. And then you had the Epicureans, Epicureans, Epicureans. They went total opposite of the Essenes, where the Essenes denied the flesh, and they were denying the flesh so much. The Epicureans believed the only way to overcome the flesh was to give in to it. That's how they were going to overcome the flesh. And can I just say, we have a whole lot of Epicureans living in the world today. I mean, we are living in a world where people just give into the flesh. Whatever the flesh wants, the flesh gets. Whatever they want, they get. And so that is definitely not the way to live. Then you have the Judaizers, this Jewish religion. And they tried to corrupt Christianity with Judaism. Can I say that the Jewish people, Paul tells us that they are an enemy of the gospel. And it's for our sake. When it comes to false doctrines of the world, what the Jew believes is just as false as any other false teaching out there. They do not believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. Now, I understand that a whole lot of pastors in churches would call me anti-Semitic for saying such. But can I just say that me, as a Christian in America, I can both believe that Israel and the Jewish people are God's chosen people, and God has chosen them. He has given them the oracles of God. He has put them on a shelf, if you will, for a time, but will come back to them and deal with his people again. And they are the apple of his eye. They are his people. He has chosen them for himself. I can believe that and still condemn anything the government of Israel does. I can do that. And because, and we're living in a day and time now where some people think that it doesn't matter what Israel does, and I'm going to try not to get too political here, that whatever they do, we're just supposed to support them and throw our weight behind them. Can I just offer this up? If Israel is God's chosen people, they don't need America's help. It's amazing. They're God's chosen people, and all this stuff about Israel. Then it's like, no, we have to help them. No, we don't. They don't need our help. Now, you can make an argument that we need them on our side. They don't need us. They might need our money. They don't need us. Why? Because God's going to take care of them. We say, well, what if something happens? What if God wipes them off the face of the earth? What if God destroys them? Well, look at the Old Testament, how many times he did that. Maybe it's in God's plan. I can believe both ways and still be right. You can't go to one extreme and hate the Israel and hate the Jew and be totally against them. You also can't go to the extreme and say, it doesn't matter what they do, we support them. That's nuts. That's crazy. And so, and if you're going to believe that, then every leader, every king of Israel, and they were mostly wicked. If you're going to believe that we are to blindly support Israel and everything that they do, in the Old Testament, we were to blindly support Ahab and Jezebel, and that Elijah was an anti-Semite. You can't have it both ways. And so what you have in America today is you have a bunch of people trying to mix Christianity and with the Jew. It don't work. It's just like trying to mix Christianity with atheists, with Satanists. They do not believe that Jesus was the Messiah. So you can't do that. So you have Judaizers. Then also you had philosophers. They tried to corrupt the Word of God back in Paul's day, and still do, by filtering the Word of God through the philosophy of the world. So you could pick any kind of philosophy of the world, and if that's your philosophy, then you try to make the Bible fit your philosophy. And to do that, you take verses out of context. You take verses that's written to certain people, and you take all of that and you mix it and match it to fit the philosophy of the world. Like the philosophy of the world is we're all children of God. That's not what the Bible teaches. And so, we could go through a lot of things. Now, what happens, these philosophers, when you mix the philosophy of the world and with the Word of God and you create something, it turns into Gnosticism. Gnosticism. And here's what they believe. They believed that God was good, but matter, everything he created, was evil. So their philosophy, since they believed that, they had to, and can I say, if we're not careful, it's like, material things are bad. Now, they can be bad, but they're not all bad. But when you say, that's bad, this bad, and you go to the extreme, all material, it's just evil. Well, God created it. So how can that be? So they've created, and they taught that between God and matter were spirits. So God could create matter, that spirits were in between God and matter, so God could create matter without ever actually touching or being part of matter. And you take that a step further, so what they believed is Jesus was just one of those spirits. And some would even claim that Jesus was not a man at all, and others claim that he was only a man up until his baptism or death, and it's just crazy. And that Gnosticism affected the three people that we talked about before, the Ebionites, the Essenes, and the Epicureans. Let's look in Colossians 4, verse number 16. So that's kind of, I tell you all that to say that's kind of where what Paul is dealing with in his day. He's dealing with this false doctrine. These false teachings are everywhere. They're corrupting the minds of people, but even people that are saved, they're corrupting their minds. Just because you run across someone that believes false doctrine doesn't mean they're lost. You take a child, when it's born, it's a great responsibility. And the reason it's a great responsibility is because you could take a child that's born and teach them whatever you want to teach them. I mean, some of the craziest things, you can teach them those things. And they'll just grow up believing those things and thinking those things because they're impressionable at that age, because they don't know, because they're just learning a bunch of things. So can I say that when a person can come, they can get saved, and we as Baptists are horrific at discipling people that have just got saved. That's why you have so many people out there, they come in and they're saved, but then we fuss at them because they go back out into the world because they've never been grounded in the doctrine of the Lord. And they go out there and they start believing things that are crazy. They start believing, well, I can lose my salvation, or I can do this, or I can do that. And you think, well, if they believe that, I used to be one of those. I used to be one of those that thought, well, if you believe that you can lose your salvation, you're not saved. That's not the case. You can truly be saved, but get caught up in some kind of false doctrine. And so that's what Paul's dealing with in the churches. And so we're going to go through Colossians. Eventually, we're going to go through all those 4 books. I learned Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians was go eat popcorn. And then the pastor, he told me that his daughter's name was Carrie, so that's Colossians, go eat popcorn, Carrie. What did you learn it? General Electric Power Company. That sort of kind of helps it. So we're going to go through all 4 of them books, but we're going to start in Colossians because Colossians, the Laodicea, is mentioned 5 times of the 7 that it's mentioned at all in the book of Colossians. So verse number 16 of Colossians 4 said, and when this epistle, that's Colossians, is read among you, cause that it be read also in the church of the Laodiceans, and that ye likewise read the epistle from Laodicea. Now there is an epistle from Laodicea that is not in the canon, but we know this Colossians is definitely written to us, and we are living in the last day, there in Revelation 3, the last church age, and it is the church, it is the age of the Laodicea church. And the spirit, the prevalent spirit in the body of Christ prior to the rapture, which we see now, is the attitude of I have my rights and personal satisfaction. And if we didn't have anything else in the Bible but that, we could look at the world today and say, yep, that is exactly, we are living in the last days. Because the church, I'm not even talking about the world, the church, Christians today, all they think about is personal satisfaction. Just like the Epicureans. They just give it into the flesh and give it into the flesh. And it's all about their rights. Well, I got this right, and I got that right, and I got this right. It's nuts, man. Now, the word Colossians mean the punishments. Look in 1 Corinthians 3. So what we're going to see here is the carnal Laodicean Christian that Colossians is going to deal with will be punished at the judgment seat of Christ. And so you can live as a Christian, you can live however you want to live. God is, He doesn't give us free will to get saved, and when we get saved, take that free will away. And some people say, you believe you can, we believe in eternal security. Y'all believe that, so you can just live however you want to live. Well, can I just say, everybody lives how they want to live. We are living, now you might not be able, some of these people could tell you, you might not could have said that 30, 40, 50 years ago. That people lived out of duty and they lived out of responsibility. Not today. No, today we're living whatever we want to do, that's what we do. And can I just say, that realization has helped me as a pastor. It's helped me thinking, I'm going to preach and I'm going to teach whatever God tells me to preach, and I'm going to do the best of my ability. What y'all do, I don't stand before the Lord. I'm not going to give an account for y'all. I can only do what I can do. And so, man, it used to tear me up when people just laid out of church. I'm not talking about sick or, even vacations or something like that. I'm just talking about just don't come. But you know what? I had to come to a realization that I am going to stand before the Lord. Y'all ain't going to be there with me. My family ain't going to be there with me. My friends ain't going to be there with me. It is me and the Lord, and I got to give an account for what I do. So you as a Christian, you can live however you want to live. You can go out and not ever strike a lick for the Lord if you want to, but you're going to suffer for it one day. And 1 Corinthians 3 tells us about the judgment seat of Christ. Verse number 12 says, "Now if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest. For the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire." So one day, as a Christian, you're going to stand before the Lord at the judgment seat of Christ, and you will be rewarded or you will suffer loss by what you did for the Lord, your works, your service for the Lord. And there's a lot into that. There's a whole lot that goes into that. It's yes, it is physically doing things. It is being faithful in whatever the Lord gives you to do. It is being a witness in word and in deed. It is keeping your character, keeping your testimony. It is all kind of things that we don't even think about that we're going to get judged for one day, that we will be judged for. And it's either we're going to watch our works burn up, or he's going to reward us. And so we see, look in 2 Peter chapter number 2. And what we find is, now a lot of people want to say Lot, because the last time we hear of Lot, he is not in good shape, we'll say, okay? And so a lot of people say Lot went to hell, but that's not the case. 2 Peter chapter number 2. What happened to Lot? Lot is a type or a picture of the carnal Christian. 2 Peter 2, verse number 6, it says, "And turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an ensample unto those that after should live ungodly, and delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. For that righteous man dwelling among them, in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds." Can I just say this? Man, we could preach right here. You know how it doesn't say that he vexed his righteous soul by his deeds. It was by the deeds of the people he was hanging around. Wherever you look in the Bible, you'll find the doctrine of separation. Wherever you look. Let's just go back and read a couple things about Lot in Genesis chapter number 19. Genesis 19, verse number 14. "And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. And when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. Verse number 24. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord, out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities, as all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. Let's see. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. Verse number 36. Then after you know what happened. Thus both the daughters of Lot were with child by their father. Lot lost everything. His daughters were saved as far as their life from Sodom and Gomorrah, but I'll just go ahead and say, yeah, you lost them. Not because he lived wicked. He had a righteous soul. But because his family seen him hang around wicked people. So just as, back in Colossians, just as the rapture over there in Revelation, you got those 7 different church ages, those churches. Laodicean is the last one. And what follows the Laodicean church is in chapter 4, a picture of the rapture. Just like the rapture follows the Laodicean church in Revelation, what follows Colossians, which is which is very connected, as we've seen, to Laodicea, is 1 Thessalonians. And in 1 Thessalonians has 5 chapters, and every single chapter is it mentions the rapture of the church. So that's how your Bible is laid out. Let's look in Revelation 3. It'll be the last one we turn to outside of Colossians. Revelation chapter number 3, we'll see what John said about the church of Laodicea, and then we're going to see what Paul wrote specifically to the Colossian church about these things that John wrote about the Laodicean church in Revelation. So in Revelation 3, verse number 15, it says, I know thy works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou wert cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods, and have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. So that's what John wrote. That's what Jesus said about the church of Laodicea, that local church in his day, but also what the last church would be, the last age of the church would be, and we're definitely there. So let's go back in Colossians. We'll read a couple things here, and we'll be done. We're going to go through those 6 things that he mentions that they were in Revelation. That Laodicean church. He says that they were lukewarm, they're wretched, they're miserable, they're poor, they're blind, and they're naked. So the first thing that we want to look at is, he said that Laodicean church was lukewarm. They wasn't cold, and they wasn't hot. They wasn't doing anything bad, but they wasn't doing anything good. And you see most Christians today fall in that category. They're just lukewarm. And what Paul said about that kind of service in Colossians chapter number 3, he says this, verse number 23, and whatsoever ye do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ. Chapter number 4, verse number 17, he says, and say to Archippus, take heed to the ministry which thou hast received in the Lord, that thou fulfill it. So a couple of things that he says about being lukewarm is that we shouldn't be hot or cold, that whatever we are doing, that we ought to do heartily like we're doing it for the Lord, because when the thing is all said and done, that's exactly who we're doing it for. We're working for the Lord. I get the privilege to pastor this church, but I'm not pastoring that church for y'all. I'm not pastoring it even for myself. I'm pastoring it for the Lord. That's what the Lord has given me to do. You say, well, the Lord ain't giving me nothing to do. Yeah, he's giving you a family to raise. He's giving you a job to work. He's giving you a family to take care of. He's giving you all kind of things. And whatever we are to do, we're to do that to the best of our ability. And can I just say, that's not being lukewarm. Now, the problem is, a lot of times in Christianity, is we'll do church lukewarm, but everything else is full steam ahead, man. And if we're going to do anything with everything in us to the best of our ability, it should be whatever the Lord has given us to do. And he also says there in chapter 4, verse 17, he tells Archippus there to whatever the Lord's given him, whatever ministry that the Lord put him in, to fulfill it, to finish it. People that are lukewarm are not going to finish the race that God has given them strong. You say, well, who are you talking to? I'm talking to all of us, because all of us at some point has fell into that lukewarm stage. All of us. It's nice when it's hot, right? I mean, it's nice when our service for the Lord and we feel him and we're praying and it seems like everything we tell him he does. We're reading the Bible and it's like the words are jumping off the page. It's saying that God's answering prayer. God's doing work. He's working in our life. He's doing something. Man, that's when it's hot and it's like, oh man, this is good. This is awesome. But then we kind of back away. Then we choose. Something happens. That's not always your fault. You can be hot and have something happen. Somebody else, yourself, whatever, just a situation, just life in general, can dump cold water on you. And so we used to, they said when we was a kid, we'd go to my cousin's house, and we had always heard if you're real hot and then get real cold fast, that you'll pass out. We always heard that. So we'd get in his hot tub, and we'd stay in there for 30 or 40 minutes. And then we'd jump out of the thing and we'd run and jump in the pool. Now, I never passed out, but it don't matter how hot I was, one jump in that pool, and it wasn't long now it's cold. And one decision can cause you to go from hot for the Lord to cold. He also said that they were wretched. Look in Colossians back in chapter number 1. Chapter number 1, verse number 10. Paul tells them here, he says, that ye might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. Verse number 20, he says, and having made peace through the blood of his cross, by him to reconcile all things to himself. By him, I say, whether they be things in earth or things in heaven. And you, verse number 21, and you that were sometime alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now hath been reconciled. So he's, you know what, they were wretched there in Revelation. And if you are a wretched person, if you are a wicked person, or if you don't think you're wicked, you just think, okay, I just did one bad thing. It don't matter if it's one bad thing or 100 bad things. It all starts in your mind. That's where all sin originates. It originates in your mind. And so he tells them here, he says, man, the Lord hath reconciled by the blood of the cross you, and you can have peace of mind. And he says there that we ought to walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing. That means we ought to walk pleasing to him, not pleasing to man, not pleasing to anybody else, but we ought to walk pleasing him. And after we are pleasing him, then we can worry about pleasing everybody else. The third thing he says, look at Colossians 3. He said they were miserable. In Colossians 3, verse number 15, he says, and let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to the which also ye are called in one body, and be ye thankful. You know who the most miserable people in the world are? People that are unthankful. People that have no peace on the inside. And I'm not even saying that's your fault. Sometimes, man, if we get our eyes on the world, it's hard to have some peace. This world's nuts, man. This world's crazy. And it's just going to get worse and worse. And can I just say, you can sit around and watch the news if you want to and learn and know all about it, but you can't stop it. It's going to happen. You have no control. So what you might as well do with everything in us, we ought to just say, well, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to try my best to keep my mind focused on the Bible, focused on God, focused on church, and try to enjoy his blessings. And I'm going to be thankful for what he's given me, whatever that is. Is that hard? Yeah, sometimes. It's hard for me to be thankful when I want something else. Right? It's hard for me to be thankful when I'm not thankful for what I got. And so he tells them, one way not to be miserable is to have the peace of God. Let it rule our hearts. And to be thankful. He also said that they were poor. Colossians 1, we'll read a few verses here. Colossians 1, verse number 26. Even the mystery which hath been hidden from ages and from generations, but now is made manifest to his saints, to whom God would make known what is the riches of his glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. So that's a riches that we have. And if you're saved, Christ lives in you. Chapter 2, verse number 2, that their hearts might be comforted, being knit together in love unto all riches of the full assurance of understanding, and to the acknowledgement of the mystery of God and of the Father and of Christ, in whom are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. This world, just like some of those philosophers we talked about at the beginning of the lesson, this world is all about education. They say, get an education. Listen, education's fine. You ought to get an education. I would be more, I guess, apt to encourage people to get an education if they actually taught something. I know several young people that have kind of went a different direction as far as college goes, and they're not going to college and just to get a degree or whatever, but they went to learn a trade. And I don't think that's the way to go. And because the world, man, they're teaching you like all kind of stuff, just all kind of stuff. And but if you want true wisdom and true knowledge, it comes from getting alone with God and praying and reading his book, and he'll give you wisdom. He'll give you some knowledge. And in chapter 3, verse number 2, it says, set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. So he tells them, hey, that church of Laodicea in Revelation, they thought they were rich, but they were poor. And the reason was, man, their affection are things on earth, not on things above. And we all do that. Guys, we all do that. We all, from time to time, get our eyes on what's around us. What we have, what we don't have, what other people have, what other people don't have, what's going on in the world, and that's where our affection is. And your affection affects your action. And so he tells them, listen, if you want to fix yourself, if you don't want to be poor, then set your affection on things above. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven is what Jesus told them. Then back in Colossians chapter 1, the fifth thing they said that was said about that church of Laodicea was that they were blind. In Colossians 1, verse number 9, it says, "For this cause we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you and to desire that ye might be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding." And if we're living in a day, we're living in a day where there is no spiritual discernment. People are spiritually blind. Even Christians, they don't see what's going on. They don't even see right from wrong anymore. I'm talking about saved people. They don't see right from wrong. They don't see the reason. You've heard the old cliche, preachers get up and, they'll say people don't see why they got to do this and don't see why they got to do that. And you know what's coming next? They don't see it because they're blind. And we're living in a world where Christians are still spiritually blind. They're not even viewing things the right way anymore. And he says, how do we become that? Well, it's the Lord. Paul is praying here to these people in Colossians that they be filled with the knowledge of his will and to have spiritual understanding. Now look in Colossians 3, we'll look at number 6 here, it'll be the last one. The sixth thing they were told was that they were naked. And in Colossians 3, the whole thing is about taking off the old man and putting on the new man. And he says, verse number 9, after he lists a bunch of stuff. Well, verse number 8 says, "But now ye also put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth. Lie not one to another, seeing that ye have put off the old man with his deeds, and have put on the new man, which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that created him." So, when we walk in the flesh and we walk after the old man, that old man's still there. And we carry it around. We have to fight it all the time. And when we walk after the flesh, we're going to reap destruction. But he tells us, listen, if you will walk in the Spirit, then what you're doing is you're no longer naked before him. Like Adam and Eve were naked before the Lord, and he clothed them. So he clothes you in his righteousness. And unless you have his righteousness, he's looking at you in your own righteousness, and you're naked before him. So that's just an introduction to